This is the first episode. You told me everything about your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not everything, some of it.
Well, I think if you talk about striving, I think that the thing that's most important is that you have to have a goal. You have to have a goal, and I think you got to hold yourself to a higher standard because we are foreigners here, and to be specific, because we're black foreigners here, So I think that that's probably one of the toughest things to do because, when you got struggles every day, and it's very easy to just fall in a lump in the sun and say, well, this is happening to me because of this. This is happening to me because I'm a foreigner. This happened to me because I'm black. This happened to me because I don't speak good Japanese, stuff like that. Or you can take it and say, okay, well, this is a challenge to me because I'm black. This is a challenge to me because I don't speak good Japanese. This is the thing. So that's the strategy I tend to take. I tend to look at it, and no matter how tough the problem is, I think, okay, so this is a challenge to me. Right. It's me against this challenge. Right. And
Where do you think you started to develop that philosophy? Because it had to start while you were young.
Yeah. I in school, like I said, I was always being compared to somebody because my mom graduated, high school when she was 16, and I went to the same high school. So, and it's just some of the same administrative people were there. So, there was all these people that would say like, yeah, but your mom, and stuff like that. And I never, that didn't intimidate me. That was a source of pride. But I always thought like, man, she's pretty smart. I mean, because, you go home and your mom is smarter than you, And so I spent a lot of time reading because in my house, we must have had hundreds and hundreds of books. And I stayed on the third floor. We had a pretty big house. I was on the third floor. We were one of these places where I say pretty big house, so that makes it sound like we were financially sound. No, we had 4 families standing at that big house. It was me, our family, my cousins, my grandmother, and and then this guy who used to stay down in the basement, who I never knew who he was. But so my room was up on the top floor, and I would sit there, and at nighttime, because the lights, I would watch the airport. We can see planes going to the airport. I would sit there and I would read books, and I would fantasize about what I was going to do when I got older.
What kind of books were you reading?
I read everything. I read typical books that teenagers would read or young kids would read then. But I was kind of an advanced reader, so I go down to my mom's thing and I'll just pull out books I read. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, stuff like that. And I just read all of those things, and the more I read, the more I wanted to become a sponge to kind of soak up all of this. So the thing that I thought it gave me a very active imagination. So even long before I went into the military and stuff like that, I was envisioning myself, in other than this capacity of growing up in St. Louis and just, going to take a job at the local factory or something like that. I always thought that wasn't my course, and but I didn't have the confidence for that. It was just one of those things. And when I went into the military, that's where the confidence started to develop, because I went into the military, and the first thing that hit me going into the military was that I grew up in St. Louis, and my area was predominantly black. Everything. We had a black newspaper and all that stuff, and I remember I went to Texas. It was my first exposure to Hispanics and knowing that wow, okay, there's so many more different people, there's so many different languages and stuff like that. And so it took a while. I was sort of slow, but like I said, I think my personality at that time was more of a sponge. I would kind of like just soak up stuff, and I would sit off to the side, and I wouldn't say much because I was pretty shy. And as I progressed through the military, and the military forces you to have confidence, because it's a pretty regimented way of life.
It's up, over, or out.
Yeah, and they don't, I'm not, and the military has the same problem that the community has, but it's not as focused because their job is to get everybody on the same page.
They have to.
And they don't play this like, well, you're white, you're black, and no. Everybody gets on that same page. And I thought that was one of the best things about the military. In a way, I thought the military was the best example of what people aspire America to be, because you brought all these people together from all these different states, all these different ethnic backgrounds and different languages, but they all work toward a common goal.
Well, see, there's one thing they've learned too, is that you can't operate with people in a democracy.
Yeah, no. Somebody has to be in charge.
It sounds good.
Yeah,
It sounds good. It makes you feel
Somebody
good,
has to be the leader.
but someone has to lead. Someone has to do. You know, you have to put people in certain positions.
Yeah.
I think this country's done a great job in being able to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Japan.
Yep.
Oh, anyway, we're getting that subject another time.
Yeah,
Go on.
yeah. So I think I started to notice my capacity to lead in the military, because as my rank got better, and as we were measured against other people, like I said, I was a journalist, and so the only way to measure us was by contests and competitions, and I started dominating the competitions. I started winning. I think the last 11 years in the military, the base that I was at won best newspaper.
You stayed a total of how many years?
21 years.
21 years. And you can retire after 20.
After 20, yeah.
Right.
So I retired a little bit after 20. But it was so funny, because in the military, people started to think, well, you know, he's really lucky, you know, because he wins these contests. And it was bad for other bases morale, because every year they look up and here's this guy winning. So I got transferred a lot, because everybody's like, oh, okay, well, you did it here, but could you do it here? And like I said, that's when my philosophy of, it's not, you know, I'm not disappointed. You know, of course I'm disappointed they're moving from a place I like, but now it's a challenge, okay, because now I have to start over with a new staff, you know, and do this all from scratch. And I didn't want to wait, you know, so I didn't want to wait like, okay, well, give me 2 years to build this staff. No, I said I wanted to go from being the best here to immediately being the best there, and immediately being the best there. And I did that. And I think that's the trait that I always
But you had to have
look.
teamwork. You had to have people help you.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing that I learned with teams. Okay, so teams are what you make them.
Okay.
You know, and I would go in, and you know, you have these discontents of people who just wasn't happy. You know, first thing I did, I brought everybody in. I sent them all down. I said, hey, we're gonna be the best newspaper. I said, now you can be a part of this team, you know, and do something you did before, or you can sit around and wallow. But if you're gonna sit around and wallow, you're gonna have to go somewhere else, because I'm not gonna have wallow guys, and everybody's gonna hold their weight, you know. And my theory is that most people will live up to a challenge if you give them a challenge. If you tell them, say, hey, you're gonna live up to a challenge, you're gonna be a part of something good, you know, because nobody wants to sit around and say, well, you know, I want to be a loser. You know, but a lot of people accept losing. They accept it because they just think that they can't win. You know, so if you go in there and you say, not only are we're going to win, but we're going to win because we're going to outwork everybody. We're going to do this, and you're going to realize that it's something that I always remember that Michael Jordan said, and I always thought about that. And I always used that. I always take stuff, these little parcels of stuff that I hear from people. Michael Jordan was saying one time his practice habit. You know, and he was saying, like, you know, you practice so hard in practice and stuff like that, and some of your teammates complain because you pushed them too hard in practice. And he said, here's my thing. He says, I practice here. He says, and I play the game here. He said, most people practice here and they play in gear. So he says, so I'm already here when these guys come out. And then when they bring it up a step, I can move up another step. And he says, and I know they can't get up there. They can't breathe that air. And I love that when he said they can't breathe that air up there, you know. And I thought the same way. So everything I structured, I thought, okay, if I start from the perspective that I'm going to be the best, and I'm going to make it so hard for them to breathe up there, you know, my job actually is much easier. So I did that. I did that in the military. I did that when I got out the military. I went to work for a newspaper, and this newspaper was like fourth in its market. And I went in there and I sat down and I told everybody, no, we're going to be the number one in the market, you know. And I brought it up there, and I told them, once you get up there, you just got to maintain it. It's not, the effort is to get there, but once you're there, it's just, you know, basically, yeah. It's
so what do you do to help keep? What do you do to help keep maintaining? Because don't people start to slack off a little bit?
No, I before it became a popular thing, I really loved to empower people. You know, so I would walk in, and there were people. I remember some of the bases I was at. Some of the people that I gave, you know, authority to. People would question me like, you know, why are you giving authority to me? Why are you doing this person? Why are you? And I thought, I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take this person who nobody's ever trusted, nobody's ever given credit, and I'm going to do the complete opposite. I'm going to walk into him and say, hey, I need you. I need you to step up. And I'm thinking the same thing like when I was younger, when I used to sit back on the sidelines hoping somebody would pick me.
But right.
And I can honestly say there was only one occasion where it didn't work, and everywhere else it did. People always stepped it up, So that's just been my philosophy, and I'm too old now to change it. So
that's interesting. Wow. So you did that. So after going to the newspaper and setting that up and stuff, then your next big venture after you got out of the service, would you?
Well, no, so I got a service, and then I took a job as a newspaper.
And then after that,
and then I decided to try TV, and so I was at Okinawa, and
that's when you had your daughters working with you.
Yeah, my daughters were working with me.
That's right. You have two
actually, my oldest daughter Tia worked with me at the newspaper.
Right.
Yeah, because I brought her in. And she was, again, people say, well, when you're mixing kids with the business. No, my kids wanted to follow me.
How old was she? How old was she then?
She was 18.
18, okay.
18, and I brought her in, and she was great.
Okay.
I mean, she went at it. She worked hard. I knew I could trust her to do this stuff.
What'd you have her doing?
She did some of the accounting stuff, some of the administrative stuff.
You actually had her doing accounting stuff.
Yeah.
So how many people did you have with you anyway?
In that staff?
Your staff, yeah. Total.
I would say the newspaper, we had about 13 or 14 people at sales things and stuff like that. But we had my daughter, friends of hers, Wendy, who I still keep in touch with.
Her friends
on Facebook.
Came to help too?
Well, they all became friends. Though,
Okay.
But I still, to this day, I still stay in touch with most of the people that was at the newspaper, And so that was good. So then the opportunity came up. Most people didn't realize back then that the military bases didn't really have cable TV. There was nothing. There was the one military channel, right? So one of the requirements when you start cable, when you're in the city and you start you grant a cable franchise, is that usually there's a requirement in there by the FCC that you have a community channel. It's a community channel. So when you see all these PBS channels, these community channels, Glanville, Florida, they have a community channel. That was a requirement by the FCC. So the military had the same thing.
Requirement for what? I don't understand. Okay.
Well, it's part of this. So this company comes in and says, okay, we're bidding. We want to provide you with this TV content.
All these TV.
The ABC, NBC, stuff like that.
Okay.
But there's always a requirement by the FCC that but you also have to create a community channel where the community leaders can come in and put on a little program.
Okay, so through this cable, you're saying all these channels, you might have. Let's just make it simple. 10 channels.
Yeah.
One of them you're saying has to
be a community
channel.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And so I took over the community channel. I called it ACTV 13. And I produced original programs. Now I had no experience producing original programs.
All right.
But I thought, and I didn't have any staff. But it was a military community full of volunteers, and I went out and I called volunteers in, and within 4 or 5 months, we were producing programs. We were producing live programs. We were producing sports programs where we went out and filmed sports games, showed them live on the air, and so and it became popular. It was the go-to channel there.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how was this financed? Okay, the public TV.
Well, it was financed. It was financed by the company. It was a company called AmeriCable. They had the contract for things, so they designated funds. You have to designate funds for this community channel.
Okay, right.
So they designated.
And you had that access to that.
Yeah, I had access to that fund, and then I created an advertising department that went out, and we got.
You can do that as well.
Yeah, you can do that on community channels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they get any special kind of discount or anything?
Well, yeah, we
can you be
did.
nonprofit and just?
Yeah. Well, it was like I think my biggest customer at the time was the Armed Forces Exchange Network.
Right.
A guy named Bob who actually you met him before. But anyway, so that kind of prepared me, and then like I said, I ended up going to Tokyo. And so I took that experience with me to Tokyo.
All that was in Okinawa.
Yeah, that was all
this happened in Okinawa, which is still in Japan.
Yeah, it's still Japan, but it's.
And then what made you? What did make you want to come to Tokyo after you were there?
Well, like I said,
a conscious decision, or you just happened to be on the plane visiting?
No, it was a conscious decision because I told you when I was a journalist, I wrote this article that and it kind of got a general fired and some couple of things. So it was always after that. It was always very tough for me in that, and I had to send my daughters to to the States. My family ended up going to the States because it was such a it
you're
was
talking
harassed.
about, okay. So everyone understands is listening to this. There was a time while you were. Was this after you got out?
Yeah, after I got out the military.
After you got out.
Yeah, well,
is that when you wrote that article?
Yeah. I didn't write that article. One of my reporters wrote it. I stood behind her.
You stood behind her,
because it was an accurate story. Yeah, but I took the responsibility.
And as a result of that article, a general was dismissed.
And it was some disciplinary on the basis. Yeah.
Okay, but
that kind of put me on a fallout. So the cable job actually they kind of saved me because I was pretty much unemployed, and the cable company came up to me. I think they actually admired the fact that I took on the base, and so they offered me that, and I took it at the time because again, I always wanted to get into TV, but never had. I worked around it because my job in the military was as a public affairs person, which I worked directly with the TV stations and newspapers. So I knew the essence of the business, but I didn't work into the business, not on the TV side. So that's why I thought I can learn this. And then my idea was that I was going to go back to LA. I was going to go to LA and
go to Hollywood.
Yeah, go to Hollywood and stuff like that.
And do what?
And
be a Spike Lee.
And be a Spike Lee. Be a Spike Lee. Okay. Be better than Spike Lee. I wanted to outdo Spike Lee.
Make your movie.
And like we talked in the first in the run-up program, right. I went there and it was just so difficult. It was tough.
LA's no joke.
Yeah, because
I'm from Los Angeles.
I know. And what you know there is that it's not that you're not good. It's just that you got so many people that are just as good. And like I said, I'm one of the ones who can call a spade a spade. When I was in the military and I was competing against papers, I could go and tell people like, "Oh, we're just better than them. We're superior. My organization is superior to these guys." Right. But when I went to LA, man, I went there and there were just so many talented people. I'd sit down and I would learn so much just talking to this guy who worked as a parking attendant. That I'm thinking like, how the hell am I going to compete with these guys? So I remember that one occasion when I was in Japan, because I used to always come back to Japan. I love Japan. So even when I had nothing to do in the States, I'd come back to Japan. Just a couple of days, just sit around, visit old friends at bases and things like that.
Wait. So I'm getting a little confused. Mm-hmm. You were living in the States for a while?
No. I was still living in Japan.
In Japan, right?
But I didn't really have a job or anything. So
you go there to travel. Okay,
so I went to LA. Get a job and stuff. Yeah, because I still had a visa. My visa hadn't expired in Japan yet. I still had 2 years of it. So I would go to the U.S. and then I'd come back to the U.S. and
meanwhile, your family's where?
Yeah, in the U.S. They were in the U.S.
Oh, you had in the U.S. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So and my daughters, they were going to school and stuff. So they had their own lives, and so I pretty much had that. So I remember during one of those trips here, I came up to Tokyo, and I was just walking around Tokyo. And I walked in Shinjuku, and they had a movie premiere, a Hollywood movie premiere, and I could see it because it was all the people that were waiting. And I didn't know who was coming, but I was interested, and so I just walked up to the table, thinking I was going to ask like, "Hey, so what's going on here?" And the people just looked at me, and I guess they assumed I was media, and it says, "Do you have your press pass?" Now I had a press pass because remember I told you I was a journalist. I never got rid of that,
Okay.
And so I showed them it, so they let me in. And that was it. And the next thing I know, I'm on a red carpet, and there's Bruce Willis coming by, and he stops, and I'm talking, and I'm thinking like, I couldn't believe it was that easy to have access to a Hollywood star. Remember?
Were you by yourself at that time?
By myself. I was Lance. I was literally stunned that I got in.
See, listen. This is off the thing, but you have somebody looking over you and
something.
watching. You walk down Harajuku, and who walks out and who do you see?
Yeah, it's Bruce Willis.
No.
Oh.
Who?
When I was walking down Harajuku, Dave Chappelle.
And Dave Chappelle walks out, and you guys have
No, we went to have sober. We went to have sober together. Yeah.
Sheesh. Yeah. All right. So anyway, so you get to get in there with this. You have your press pass.
Yeah.
Walk up there as a foreigner, which you do have advantages if you look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're a foreigner.
Yeah, and I guess just the way I inquired, they just assumed it. Yeah. So I get into this. I get into this, and I thought about that because again, like I said, I've been to LA like several times, and I couldn't get into a donut shop, man. Unless I was buying that donut,
Yeah, because everybody's somebody
that stuck in the back of my mind, and then I thought. After everything went down in Okinawa, I thought, you know what, I have nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. I'm gonna go up to Tokyo. Now I lucked out because AP, Associated Press, they immediately had an interest in me as a journalist because they said, hey, dude, you're like a high caliber journalist. We'll hire you.
Trained by the military, right?
Yeah, but I told them, I says, I want to work in TV, and the guys would look at me like, what experience do you have in TV? Now I had the little cable channel thing, but that's not AP experience. Right. And I remember there was a guy, Miles Edestein, and Eric Talmadge. I think you remember Eric Talmadge. You met him back in the day. He was a journalist. Okay. He was a journalist. So
is he the one that went bowling with us?
Yeah.
He passed it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Eric Talmadge. So of course he vouched for me. He said, "Hey, look, the guy can do it."
Solid,
right. But I remember there was a Japanese guy there, and he was listening because he's asking me technical questions about TV stuff, and I am literally blowing him off like, oh yeah, because I can tell he's trying to catch me like, okay, this guy doesn't know the terminology, and things like that, and but they said, okay, we're looking for a person probably in 3 weeks you'll get, so we'll give you a shot in 3 weeks. So in 3 weeks, I went back and I literally just went to the internet and I taught myself everything, how to edit and all that stuff. Because in Okinawa, when I was there, I didn't edit. There was a guy who knew that stuff, and I taught myself how to edit. I taught myself how to film and stuff like that. And I had an advantage because I can write. So in the TV business, writing is the hardest thing, writing scripts. So I went there and I nailed it. And not only I nailed it, but before long, I was putting out more stuff than everybody, especially with the entertainment stuff, because and the deal I cut with AP at the time, which again was kind of a ballsy move, was that I told him, I said, hey, I'll do this for you. You can pay me, but I want rights to this footage. And I remember the guy told me, he said, hey, we're AP. We're the biggest news organization in the world. We don't do that,
But you had nothing to lose.
I said, okay. And I remember I got a call from New York, and the office guy says, You're really serious about it? I said, yeah. I said, hey, I think I can go out and get you guys A, B, C, and D, because they were getting killed by Reuters at the time on that thing. I said, I think I can beat these guys, And that's the way I talk. I'm not one of these guys that everything is a competition with me, but I do understand that people want to associate with winning. They want to associate with being the best. And if you can go in there, you can look a person in the eye and say, hey, we can be the best, or we can be also. Yeah, most people will give you a shot. Right. And that was a great relationship with, and it culminated when we did the Michael Jackson. That was the culmination of
AP.
Yep.
How long were you with AP then?
For about 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah, 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were part of their staff?
I was part of.
I was contract.
I was an independent contract as a staff, but they treated me like staff, and I can use the office.
So how did that end? How did it end?
It ended when I started. I wanted to do my ACTV stuff. I revised AC because you remember I had ACTV 13.
Did I know you? I didn't know you then.
No, we had just started to. I think I met you as I started doing the ACTV
you were, I don't
stuff.
think you were AP.
I finished the ACTV. Yeah, because then I just because I was also doing some stuff for BET.
Okay.
Yeah, and the BET thing was just I would send them stuff like AP. I would send it to them. They use it. They wouldn't use it. But I had so much material that I started tinkering around with it. And I remember I was I approached somebody about it. There was a distributor who said, "Hey, you should make a TV program of this." And I said, "Because you got all these celebrities, you got all this stuff." He says, "I didn't even know there were black people in Japan." And he said, I said, "Well, what would I call it?" And I said, "What would I call it? Like Black Life in Japan?" And the guy goes, "That's actually a great title," And I was like, "What?"
That's right.
And so I said, okay, Black Life in Japan, because it was just catchy enough in the thing.
That's right.
And what happened was that the next year, I had done like maybe 6 or 7 months of Black Life in Japan. I went to Las Vegas for a TV convention because all this time now, I sort of like a sponge. So I started doing more professional stuff. I started buying more professional equipment. Every time I can find a seminar or something that I can learn, I would do it. In Las Vegas had this thing called NAPTI, National Association of Professional TV Executives, whatever. And so I would go there every year to absorb more information. So I went there, and I ended up appearing on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, talking about Black life in Japan, and it just blew up. I mean, again, they didn't really have things that they called viral back then, but, that was as viral can get, you know, because
it was just,
I mean, all around the world, people were calling me and stuff like that, even and people were like, oh, I want to see this Black Life in Japan program. So that's how I earned my income. I was Black Life in Japan. I was producing those, and I was getting income from it, and yeah, and then I started my life in Japan, and success in Japan. So that was the thing. And I think, like I was saying the other day, with success in Japan, see, that took me to a different level, because up until then, I was really happy to be working. I was creative, you know.
But
the business part, I didn't really get, because I was having fun doing this. Because you got to remember, I spent 21 years in the military. You know, and it's
socialism.
Yeah.
You can't be a capitalist and be in the military.
You cannot.
You can't be a capitalist.
And I still had a little picture, so it's not like I was, destitute.
The thing is, in the military, because both of us were in the Air Force, you have to, like you said, you have to fit in. So therefore, it's kind of like being Japanese. If you are too shiny and you stick out, they'll hit you back down.
Exactly.
And get you right. No, I'm sorry. A general, I don't care if he's from a wealthy family, and he has 4 stars. If he pulls up in a Rolls, they will say, OSI, say, I'm sorry, sir. But that's not good for the morale of the other people here. Because they cannot do that. So he can pull up in his Lincoln. That's about it. You know, but he can use military cars,
with a driver.
But you don't come in your Gulfstream and fly up in there and have it painted with your name on it, General such and such.
Exactly.
So that's the hard thing that some people have a hard time, I find, and I think you did for a bit too. I didn't, because I stayed in for 4 years. I never, and my whole thought was different. But of getting out and realizing that the sky is the limit. The mold that you fit into is the one you make. And
there was one thing
that makes a difference.
I remember one of the research things that I was reading. It said that a huge majority of military members, retirees, guys who get out, die after 5 years.
5 years, true. Mortality rates are very high.
It was very high. It was because I think they couldn't break that mode. They couldn't, make that transition.
Part of it too. If you've spent 20 years in your mind, but what you didn't do, letting someone tell you what to do.
Everything. They told you everything.
They do. They tell you exactly. They can. You can go in there with that. We used to call those people lifers. If you go in and you given your life to the military where you don't think of anything outside of that, their mortality rate is the one that's high. But the ones that were career oriented and said, I'm going to give this service 20 years, like you did. I'm going to give it 20, maybe 21. But you were always doing something else.
See, and that was the thing. I always had different jobs.
So your mortality rate couldn't be. It's difficult because your mind's always going, and you had purpose. They get out, all of a sudden sit back, and their buddies are dying, and they just start to die.
And Lance, I remember I went to meet one of my buddies. He was a superior to me. He was a couple ranks over, and I remember when I went to meet him, he looked like he was 100 years old.
He lost everything.
I actually almost gasped air when I met him, and I thought, what the hell happened to you? And he was just, he really missed the military, and I almost wish that he could have went for 30 years or something, because I think it would have benefited him more.
Well, that's why. But that's exactly why the military is allowing you to do 30 now.
And the other thing that the military does now is they really do a lot of work for transition.
They do. They try to.
Because it cuts out, because military had a high suicide rate and stuff like that. So anyway, I took all of that. And like I said, with my new confidence that I can do this, I can go in and take on these opportunities. Once I did the AP thing and the BET thing, and then it led to the Michael Jackson thing. I mean, confidence was never a problem after that, because then I thought, okay, I have shown at every level I progressed in my life that I can hang.
What you've shown is you. Other people didn't have doubt in you. It was you. You had to look in the mirror and say, Dad, you just got through spending how long with Michael? How many weeks?
It was 11 days.
And I'm sure you'd come home in the evening, look in the hotel room and go, am I really with Michael Jackson?
Man, I could not believe that.
Because when I was just the minute I was next to him, I'm thinking,
I didn't even know how to tell people. I didn't know how to explain that to people because it sounds such an absurd thing, like, oh yeah, you're with Michael Jackson.
Nobody will believe, and they don't want to believe you. They have to keep on, and they still think, okay, that's a mannequin, a cutout. That's not really him. But you're really with him. You got a chance.
And so that, and then like I said, when I started these programs, and the one thing I was saying the other day about success in Japan. See, what that did for me is because I looked at these people who you were profiling on this program, and I thought, they're not so different from me. See, up until then, I thought that these people were different. They were more special, and things like that.
They have a little pocket of gold.
And And I thought, I loved their stories because each one had a different story. But the persistent fact of each story is they all strove for success, which made the title great, Success in Japan. But they all strove for that, and that was the thing. And the other thing that stood out it was 3 or 4 of them, that they wasn't afraid to talk about being rich, or being well off, And I thought, but that was another thing that kind of changed my mind. I said, oh, okay,
I had a good friend.
It's not bad to be.
I had a good friend of mine. She said to me, her name is Joan Shepard, and I hope that she hears this somehow or another because she was inspirational to me. She was married to a very famous Japanese singer here, Inca singer. Joan Shepard said to me a long time ago, she said, Lance, never apologize for being rich. And it's kind of like, what? She said, never apologize for being rich. Now, I've learned to say, I don't use the term rich. I say wealth. And the reason why I use wealth or energy, because as an investment consultant, which I was in the military, I learned real quick. The guy put a bunch of money in front of me. He said, how many of you want that money? And I was saying, they went, no, okay, but that's all you can have is that. Then we learn real quick, money's not what you want. You want what it can be exchanged for. You don't want the dollar bill. You don't want the coins. What are you going to do with it? You want good health care. You want to be able to travel this way.
Lifestyle.
You want certain clothing. You want to be able to treat people a certain way.
You want to be, if you want to get up today and do this, you want to be able to get up today and do this.
And that takes energy.
If you want to do this with your family, you want to do that with your family.
And see, to change that mindset, whereas in the old days, it used to be barter. I grow corn and you raise pigs, and I give you corn, you give me a couple of pigs. But nowadays, we just have that currency. And when you start thinking that way, you start realizing ownership too is another thing that I try to get out of. We've been taught to own things. What that does is, if that mindset locks you down in a way, and there's nothing you'll be able to do. But that's a conversation for another time too. But go on. So you got the confidence because you realized that these people thrive for success and weren't afraid to say so.
Exactly. And one of the wonderful things about my profession, the media profession, is that you're forced to meet all kind of people. And so that's the good people, that's the bad people, but it's also the inspirational people. And I just found that the more I did it, and like I said, it started with Success in Japan, but then I started looking around at other things, and I started seeking out, inspirational people. I wasn't afraid to come up to and say, hey, here I am. I remember a really good thing. So I started, I was like, okay, I'm going to start my production business, which is when we kind of met. And so I said, well, I got to get an office, I got to do this, I got to blah, blah, blah. And I had to go down to Osaka because they had an opening, I think it was the opening of Universal Studios in Osaka.
That's right.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger and Steven Spielberg was there. And I went down as there I had AP credentials, so I think I went down as the AP guy and stuff like that. And I remember, the way that typical works, you get an interview with them, sit down in the room, you can talk with them for 5 minutes, and then, you may can ask 1 question, 2 questions, personal questions, stuff like that, And I remember it was Steven Spielberg was there. And I'm like, oh, Steven Spielberg, I'm talking to the Steven Spielberg. And I don't know what the hell happened, but it came into my mind, like, he said, you know what, you should ask him about, some advice on producing stuff, Now I knew that was against the rules. You're not supposed to do it because and for a reason they got a limited time. They want to talk about whatever functions they're there, and they might give you one question on how you like Japan, stuff like that. And I looked at him, and it just came out of my mouth. And one of these things that I'm saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
Do it.
And it came out. I think the question I would have asked was, so in Japan, what is it that fascinates you about Japan? And what came out was, hey, you know what? I'm doing my own production business here. What advice would you have for somebody like me who really want to, get to be somebody like you, And I was surprised because, and I could hear the, people doing that. And I remember he stopped and says, "Oh, is the interview done?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've screwed this one up, Okay, yeah. And I said, "Yeah." And he took a sip of coffee. He says, "Hey," he said, "You know what?" He says, "This is what you do." He said, "Tell me a little bit what you're doing." And I told him, I says, "Well, I'm trying to get an office and stuff like that." And he got looked at me. He says, "So you can afford an office?" I was like, "Well," he said, "Let me tell you what I'm talking about." He says, "Right now," he says, "there's this technology where you can take video now, you can transfer it across or something like that." So he said, one thing you might consider, he says, is that, you get your guys and let them work from home, get a computer, you guys can send all this stuff and you can edit stuff. He said, what do you need an office for unless who are you trying to press for the office?
That's how you talk. That's how you knew.
Yeah, and I took, literally, Lance, I came out of that next day. I canceled the lease for the building I was going in. And the first day I started calling guys, I said, "Guys, we're going to start doing stuff from home and stuff like that." And to this day, I still do most of the business from home. Yeah.
And this COVID has made everything.
Yeah.
It's changed structures. There's going to be a lot of empty.
But it's just one of those things where, like I said, sometimes I get these little parcels and stuff. It was just that gut instinct to tell me, like, hey, why not ask one of the most successful producers in the world, something like that? And to him, he probably never remembered it, but I remember it.
Every bit of it.
It was such a monumental shift in the way I operated, and I would say in the successful way I operated, because it allowed me to do so much more, and I wasn't bogged down with the fact that, I got to worry about paying this rent, I got to do this and all this kind of stuff. I could just concentrate on making a great project. So it was that right after that is when Fox came on to be, and that was another significant breakthrough. And what happened with the Fox thing was what caught their attention was a thing I did with Will Smith, where
because of Warner.
Because of Warner came to me and said, "Hey, you say you might can do this and maybe do something with the military and stuff like that." So we set up a thing for I Am Legend, in which Will Smith went to Yokota. And it was a huge success. There was 6,000 people that greeted him when he went to Yokota. And it was interesting because when we were on the helicopter, they picked us up in a Black Hawk at Hardy Barracks, which is, anybody who knows, that's a facility right in the middle of Tokyo. It's a small military facility, basically a helicopter pad. And they took us to Yokota, and Will Smith turns to me and said, "Hey, this is the first time I've been on a helicopter like this." Now, this is the guy, independent, and I'm looking at him and I said, "What?" He said, "Well, most of this stuff is CG. And it was just so cool. And like I said, earlier that day, he took me to breakfast and stuff like that. So, it seemed like, everybody said like overnight, you become an overnight success. So it wasn't an overnight success, but I think it was then, after the Michael Jackson and that I thought, okay, I can hang with anybody now. My confidence level is at the point that the last thing I'm gonna worry about is whether I can do it, Right. And so then I set my sights high. When I was at Fox, I always set my sight pretty high to do, great stuff in it. And my crowning achievement, I think, at Fox is that I produced over 300 episodes of my program Backstage Pass.
Right.
And in fact, we had a gala and you were the MC. Yeah,
sure did.
And so now I'm at the point where I just do and produce the type of shows that I want to do. So I don't, a network doesn't come to me and says, "Well, we want you to do this." I go to a network and say, "This is what I'm going to do."
Right.
Yeah.
But you have a great big hit with this Defending Japan.
Yeah, Defending Japan. That was.
How many episodes do you have? It was 6?
No, 9.
9 episodes.
You know what's amazing about Defending Japan? So I worked at Fox, right?
And who came up with that idea anyway to do Defending Japan?
Well, it was the thing. When I was at Fox, I thought because it was Fox and National Geographic.
Right.
So then,
we almost did a show.
Yeah.
What we gonna do there? I forgot. But we talked about it. We had some issues going on.
Yeah. So what happened was, I always wanted to do, because I spent 20 years in the military and I was a public relations guy in the military. Now the problem with that is that we never got positive news. We always said, somebody raped somebody, there was an accident, some plane crash and stuff like that. And it used to just get to me that nobody could see all the good stuff the U.S. military, all the sacrifices the family and stuff made. So I pictured when I was at Fox, you would have thought Fox would jump on this show and say, oh, great, And I remember it wasn't called Defending Japan. It was called The Guardians. And I went to the Fox people and they looked at it and go, you know what? We're not really interested in, what the military community is doing and stuff. I said, yeah, but, we can go on planes and stuff like that. And guy looked at me like, hey, if you ain't got Beyonce on that, I don't want to hear you. So that was the end of that. And
this is one of the top executives at Fox.
Yeah, and then actually, Bill Ireton, who was running Warner at the time, his sister was also in charge of the History Channel.
His sister?
Yeah, his sister was in charge of the History Channel. And so he had suggested, hey, maybe you guys should talk because, he knew I did the military stuff because of the Will Smith thing. And so I went and I talked with her and I said, hey, look, I really think that, this would be great for you guys and stuff. And we got talks like that, but it didn't go anywhere, Okay. So it kind of died with that. And then...
But was the name change or still the Guardians?
No, it was still the Guardians.
Okay.
It was still the Guardians, but then what happened was John Flanagan, who I worked with, he worked at Fox Movie before, and who had been a sponsor of several programs I had produced, he took over as the History Channel, and he said, hey, remember that idea you had about the military stuff? He said, maybe we can do it here, because when he was there, they had a program that the History Channel had produced on the Japanese military. The Hokushinsha had produced a program. It was an excellent quality-wise program. Boring as hell.
How long did it last? How many episodes?
I don't know, but it looked, technically it was like so many Japanese produced programs. I mean, it was just, some spectacular, the quality of it was good, but it just,
boring.
It was boring.
It couldn't keep your attention.
It didn't.
Okay.
And so I looked at that, and so I went back and I wrote up an idea for 13 episodes. I made a proposal to them. And in between the proposal, we kind of came up with the idea. We kind of jointly came up with the idea of calling it Defending Japan, which it just sounded so right. Good, Mm-hmm. And I remember when they aired it, the ratings doubled the next available thing. It was just so dominant in the ratings and things like that. So
I remember seeing it when you gave the showing at the Sano.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I said, you've arrived.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I said, Dan has arrived.
Yeah.
Because that was so well produced and everything. It was just exciting. The only thing one guy with namesake, you've had a little thing.
Yeah.
But the way it was shot,
the
access you had to the military, that people don't realize how difficult it is to get
It is.
You had access because I used to be vice president of the Navy League.
Yeah.
So I've been on more.
Yeah, you did a lot of orientations, right? Military orientation
seagoing
stuff.
craft than most people have been flown out to aircraft carriers. But the access you had and the way that you showed it had to make everyone in the service feel very proud of being there. That's equivalent to a recruiting movie without the background trying to, It just showed stuff that people never get to see. It was well done.
Yeah, so that's...
it is well done.
Yeah, and so that was, to me, that's, it brought a full circle because, everybody kind of conceded that, well, he's very good at this entertainment stuff. He's good at these Hollywood gossip programs and, and the reality programs. So he's really good at that. But, how can he get on a serious level? So with that and with this other program called Biography, I kind of showed the full scale of stuff that I can get into.
What's biography? I've never seen that.
Biography is one where it's the same thing as a documentary, but it's more serious. It's on a one subject person. So I did on Junko Kashino. I did it on astronaut and stuff like that. I showed it to you.
I haven't seen it. How many have you done of that?
6 episodes.
6. So you have 9 of Defending Japan.
Yeah, 6 episodes.
How many are you supposed to do of Defending Japan? 13?
No. The season 9 is the first for the season. So we're doing a second season. See, it's a little bit in the U.S. In the U.S., it's 13 episodes, but in Japan, it fluctuates between 6, 8, 9, and 12. Depending on how the network schedule. Yeah, how the network schedule goes. Yeah. Okay. So now we're about to launch season 2. Of course, we have to get sponsorships and things like that, but it's going to happen.
Are you still responsible for the sponsorships too? Because it's your company.
Yeah. Because networks have a hard time. You would think networks have an easier time, but they tend to. What happens is people, especially companies, realize very quickly that so it's not really the network who's producing it. So they kind of look at the network guy and say, yeah, all I know is you just want money. But they look at the producers and say, okay, so this is the guy who actually can give me input into this program. So I've always been pretty good at that because I've always been pretty straight with people, and so that's the point that I'm at now. And now and the final step now is to start producing movies and like a drama series. So I just finished a script not too long ago for a 3-part drama series called Tokyo Under Night. It's a true story of a pretty notorious nightclub that was key in Tokyo in the 50s and the 60s. So that's kind of one of my goals. And then I'm working on a couple of movie projects, original scripting, because I was always a writer, so I'm not intimidated by the idea of writing a script, and so I'm again, I look at it as a challenge, because people tell me, well, you don't have a script, you never had a Hollywood script and stuff like that, but it's been pretty good, and I've been encouraged because I've been in talks with people at Netflix and so I think that's kind of a difference now, because I would have never imagined me as the guy like people like Netflix or NBC would contact and says, hey, we want to look at your thing. So,
and what was it that you just came back from the States for Defending Japan?
That's Japan Connects Hollywood.
Japan Connects
Hollywood. It was called Japan Cuts Hollywood, but now it's changed the name. But it was a major film festival. It was held in New York, and for the first time, they moved it to L.A.
Okay.
And so I remember the guy who was the chairman of it is a vice president, one of the vice president Warner in the U.S.
Now, what's the name of this event? This event happened every year and used to happen in New York. What's it called?
Well, it's the Japan Cuts Film Festival.
So it's only for Japan?
The theme is sort of like Japan and America.
Okay, so it's not a mixture of other countries.
It was just Japan, but it was always a small kind of independent thing. In New York, it was almost one of the trendy, in vogue type things where just only a handful of people. But then when it moved to Hollywood, it was Hollywood, so it blew up. It was a much bigger festival, celebrities and stuff like that. So I remember when the guy contacted me, and I had met him before, but I couldn't remember where, And so he's talking to me. So it becomes very obvious that I can't remember where I met him at. So he reminds me, he says, I met you with Tom Cruise. It was you and Tom Cruise, and you were on the plane with Tom Cruise, and you guys were talking, and I was just like, yeah, that was that. And he was talking about a promotion we did for this movie that Tom Cruise did in Japan, it was called Kill and Kill Again. About sci-fi, but Tom Cruise went through 3 cities: Osaka, Hokkaido. Well, it was 3 cities he went to, and there was only a handful of journalists that they picked to go, and I was one of the ones.
Oh, so that's when you were on the plane with him?
Yeah, on the plane with him.
Was this through Warner?
This was through Warner, yeah, and Tom Cruise came back and we sat down and just talked, and so he says, he said that was the guy that Tom Cruise came back and said, hey, I want to talk to that guy, so that was pretty cool, and but he said, look, maybe you should consider coming into this festival, and I thought, it's whatever, and there was my partner Gutney Gutnison, who actually said we should do it. We should do it because it's an expense to pack up and go to LA. And like I said, it's not just me. It's like a crew and stuff like that, and it's pretty expensive. And it's LA. I was still a little bit intimidated by LA based on my experience back in the day, right?
But you came in completely different.
But it was so different. And And when they asked that we should submit, defending Japan, and the guys, and they were straight up and said, hey, look, we can't guarantee something to win. But he said, I watched it. I was here in Japan. I watched that show. That's one of the best, shows I've seen, period. Right. He says, in any country, And we went there, and it was an amazing experience. I got to be honest. I was just, and what made it more amazing for me is, for many years, my family back home, my brothers, my sister, and all of them, they know I'm in the media business, stuff like that. But, I'm in Japan. They've never physically seen me much in the news. There was a time when I was in the Air Force, and I was stationed at Scott Air Force Base, which is outside St. Louis, my home, and I worked on a local newspaper there. And it was such a great source of pride for my mom and them that, Dan, the journalist, But, Hollywood is Hollywood. So my family surprised me because first my brothers, said, hey, we're going to come to the premiere, because it was a Hollywood premiere. And I'm like, why? They said, well, because, we'd never ever seen you in your capacity and stuff like that, And then I didn't know, but my daughters were behind the scene, because my daughters just called me and says, hey, Dad, we'd like to come. And I'm thinking like, oh, now there's pressure, because I got fellow, and they organized, and so I had like 20-something members of my family. It's like a family reunion. I saw the pictures. It was fantastic. And I am telling you, man,
they came decked. They were all in their clothing. They look good.
Lance, and we were having all kind of technical problems there. We had.
I heard that. And your brother set that up. Bingo.
My brother and a guy, Richard Colombo here, Damon Smith, my brother, who's a TV producer. Mm-hmm. I always call him the real TV producer because he actually went to college for this, right? And I was a nervous wreck because I'm thinking I finally got my light on Thursday, and we were literally 3 hours before the premiere opened, and we still had the screening, and it looked like one of those old Chinese kung fu flicks, whatever, And I'm sitting there,
it wasn't matching,
and we had got to the point where we said, well, maybe we just show it, and we'll have the general, who was one of the features there, who actually came, a three-star general, and we just have him speak because he was a dynamic speaker. And my brother looked at me and he goes, no, that's not going to happen, So he got together, and him and Richard, they talked, and it seemed like only 20 minutes. And he looked up there and he had it fixed. And he's my one of my youngest brothers, but I was so proud of him. And he was so proud of me. It was just, it was like a mutual thing, nice. And when my family was there, and we walked out on the stage to receive the honor, and I can look out there and I saw my family member. I saw many members. There were 20 members from Tokyo American Club.
I was going to say,
20-something members from.
Had an entourage from Tokyo that came.
They came.
And the thing is, I looked at that and I thought, maybe I started to come.
I wish you would have been there. I wish you would have been there.
Maybe I should do that.
I think because you're from LA, I think it wasn't a big deal. Yeah, it wasn't a big deal for you.
No, it's not a big deal. It's just the thing is, I'm thinking that's not my path. I'm not in entertainment.
Yeah.
We're close, but that's your family, and you can do your thing. I didn't know who was going to be there, but when I saw what's his last name?
Kingsley.
When I saw him there, I said, nah, maybe I should have brought my boys, and we could have rocked it. And supported. But
but you're coming in 2021. I'm getting him on record. He's coming in 2021. We're taking all the boys. We're going there, and we're going to see LA. Lance style, Lance Lee style. We're roll up in there.
So what was the award that you won?
We won the best documentary for the top documentary. We won the top award.
How many? How many other documentaries were there?
Well, there was a bunch of them. They don't give you the number, but it was a lot. It
was more than 10.
Yeah.
Okay,
and the thing was that
even that would be good.
Not only did we win the best documentary, we were one of only 2 of the screenings, and they had like 18, 19 screenings that sold out. We sold out. And I mean, we sold out a couple of times because they moved us 2 or 3 times to bigger theaters.
How many times did it show?
No, it only showed once, but the thing is that we sold out so quickly in a smaller theater because, it's a documentary, And then they said, hey, we're going to move it to a bigger one. So I'm a little apprehensive because I'm saying, hey, I like the small one.
One time already?
No.
Oh, they were
it was advanced tickets. Advanced tickets,
so they sold out. So they had to move
so
to
we sold out
because bigger
theater. Because I was thinking like, no, I want to have the sold out thing. I don't care if it's 40 people. Yeah, and it was like 100-something people. But the fact that we had brought somebody, I had family members, and then there was just, it was just bust stuff. It was people that that I knew years ago in the military and stuff like that. I was just surprised at how Facebook, people were reading on Facebook about this thing, and they said, hey, you know what? I remember a couple of Keith Jones. Remember the championship? They saw it on Facebook. They were in Colorado.
He came?
They flew up. Him and Arthur, they flew up.
But how's he doing?
He's doing great. He's doing great. He's doing stuff. But it was all these kind of people. Desiree, it was all these people I knew. That I knew from all these different places, Okinawa and stuff. People just came. Lance, I was so touched. I was moved one day to tears because I was looking at these people. There was a couple, Charlie and Gloria. They gave my daughter her first part-time job in Okinawa. When I was in Okinawa, I told you I had problems with the military. They were one of the few people who stood behind me and supported me. And when I saw Charlie and Gloria, they came from Latin America. I forget the name of the country. Costa Rica. They came from Costa Rica all the way to come to the thing. People came from Germany that come from this. They came from all this. They came from Florida. They came from all this just to see our program. And so that I remember Goodney and I up on the stage, and we were looking out, and we kind of, as everybody's clapping and stuff, we kind of just, kind of peek back to each other, and we said, "Can you believe this?" We were just like,
second time though, right?
Yeah. Goodney had been in LA before. Yeah.
Did they win anything?
I don't think so. He hadn't been in that festival, but he had lived in LA for 3 years and worked there, and did some movies there. But and so that was just such a huge springboard now because, again, there is no higher level than Hollywood. In our industry, that's it. So now, my mantle is a little bit different. So now I want to do meaningful stuff. I always felt I did meaningful. Yeah, but what I want to do now is that I've decided that, I'm going to train a bunch of people. I got new, and I had just had a new guy come in now, Sherlin. And I says, and I want to continue this legacy. I want to.
So it continues past.
Yeah, I want to do it. My daughter's, my grandson, who's a rapper. I brought him out there, and he just, so it's just it's a wonderful thing, and I feel blessed. I feel that I've been lucky because I'm running to the right people at the right time. And the one thing that sort of I would tell everybody is that it's great when you have a group of positive people around you. See, here in Japan, we're very lucky, because we got a bunch of, we have our inner circle, of course, but then we have our outer circle of people who respect what we're doing and who we can draw from, And there's no like, hey, what have you done for me lately or things like that. It's just an acknowledgement that, we're making it happen. So yeah, I'm grateful that you're talking to me on this. I feel honored that you have asked me. We can talk forever.
So, on that note, I was thinking the same thing. I'm just hoping when I look at the video portion, it doesn't really matter because it's a podcast.
Yeah.
So if the video comes out the way it comes out, it doesn't. Which this podcast is going to go. But I want to thank you, Dan, for taking the time, and we're going to do this again because we have other topics that we can talk about, and you're always going to be a part of my success in Japan. There's no doubt about it. And with that, if you guys have any comments, anything you want to know about, please make sure that you write it down. I don't know how we're going to go about doing it, but I know that they set it up so you can write stuff.
I'm excited.
Dan,
success in Japan.
Success in Japan.
Now this is so ironic for me because I help you film when you meet Success in Japan, and that was my. I can tell everybody now. My goal was always to be on Success in Japan, and now I'm on Success in Japan.